So this is chapter number 6, which we have to start now, that is related to external analysis. So in the previous chapter, we had discussed about stakeholders. Stakeholders can be categorized as internal stakeholders and external. And one category is which is not internal, but which are directly linked to the organization. Those we call the connected stakeholders, right? So internal, external, and connected, these were the three category of stakeholders. Now we are talking about environment. We are talking about environment. With environment, I'm not talking about the, I don't mean the natural environment, I'm talking about the business environment. So business environment can be of two types, internal and external. Now, we are currently focusing on the external environment of a business. This chapter is one of the component of external environment. That's why it's named external analysis. I hope you can understand why this is named external analysis. And in the external environment, we have a variety of factors which influence the business. There are a lot of factors which influence the business, which are external to the business, but have some impact on the business. So those components are generally termed as PESTLE, P-E-S-T-L-E. What does that mean? We'll study and discuss about that, but we will be discussing only the P out of PESTLE, that is political and legal factors. So political and legal factors, how they impact the organization, especially the laws. This is what we have to study in this chapter. So first of all, these are the external factors which impact the organization. One is political and legal, which we have to discuss in this chapter. Another is economic factors. We'll also discuss economic factors somewhere else. Then we have social and demographic factors, technological factors, environmental factors, and competitive forces. So you can see clearly that these are all external to the business. I'm not talking about from the point of view of stakeholders. Like you can say that competitive forces are external, okay. Political and legal factors are external, but not necessarily that all the factors are external to the organization. I'm just talking about the external environment. So these are all coming from the external environment. So internal environment is something which we can control, but the external environment is not controllable. And that's why it becomes very important that we study about all these factors, all these components, which are part of our external environment. Okay. So now let's talk about PEST or PESTLE or STEP. Actually, these are all the same terms which are interchangeably used, and an acronym is tried to be formed. So in order to fully understand an organization, we need to examine the environment in which it operates. Means we're talking about the external environment. This analysis should include political and legal factors, yes, economic factors, social and demographic factors, technological factors. Now, by the name of this, you can also understand political factors or legal factors means those factors which are politically impacting the organization, which are political in nature, but impacting the organization. Similar thing with economic factors, social, demographic factors, technological factors. Okay, so these are covered in different chapters. This chapter currently covers political and legal factors. The chapters to come will cover other factors as well. So if I take the first letter of these, PEST, then I can call it PEST analysis. But if I start treating legal factors as separate from political factors, then it will be PESTLE or PESTL. If I start putting another factor, if I add one more factor, that is environmental factor or environment, I'm talking about natural environment this time, then it will be PESTL for legal and E for environment. Getting my point? So it can be termed as PEST. The same analysis can be termed as STEP because I'm just interchanging the first letters. I can also call it PESTL for standing for political, economic, social, technological, and legal. I've separated political and legal in this, and we can also term it as PEST, L and E, PESL. So that will mean L stands for legal and E stands for ecological or environmental. All right. So these are the different ways in which we can term the same type of concept, in which we can use the same type of concept. So you can name it PESTL, you can name it STP, you can name it PESTLE, but all these acronyms are referring to only the same thing, that is the external environment to the organization. Okay. So are these external forces or external components present in every kind of industry, in every kind of are acting upon every kind of business? The answer will be yes. So PESTLE operates everywhere. These are operating in every industry. And since these are operating in every industry, these are operating for every business. Now, I guess you know what is the meaning of industry. Industry means, generally we understand industry as a manufacturing unit, but that's wrong. Industry means a group of businesses dealing in similar things. For example, if I talk about food industry, then all those restaurants, those pay and pick, those pizzerias, in fact, if I talk about packaged food also, confectionery, everything will fall under food industry, right? So food industry means all those who are dealing as a restaurant or a pay and pick, the packaged food, or as a pizzeria, or as a canned food, anything which is related to food will fall under food industry. If I talk about tourism, then we have tour operators, we have guides, we have transporters, we have hotels. All these people are falling under tourism industry. So industry means a bunch of businesses who are dealing in the similar kind of line of business. Okay. So that means if PESL operates on every industry, automatically it operates on every component of the industry. I'm referring to the smaller businesses. Okay. So here we are talking about, just to understand PEST analysis for any industry or any kind of firm, we are taking as a haulage firm as an example. You're taking haulage firm. Haulage firm is one which transports goods. Haulage means transportation of goods. So they might be using trucks. They might be using lorries and other things as means of transport. And that's how they are shifting goods from one place to another. So this haulage firm wants to understand that how the external environment is impacting it. So we'll try to understand it. First of all, we'll take political and legal environment as a factor impacting a haulage firm. So when it comes to political, and legal environment, it includes all the things which are associated with laws or which are associated with politics of a country or a region. Okay, so fuel taxes. If the fuel taxes are increased or decreased, these will impact the business for sure. Yes, government steps to reduce pollution. If government is taking huge steps for reducing pollution, especially from lorries, then it will be a trouble for the business. It can impact the business. Yes, congestion charges. Congestion charges are charged in case of traffic jams happening because of huge vehicles. So congestion charges, if these are charged in cities, then those congestion charges will again form part of the cost. Plans to build new roads. If government is planning to build new roads and special lanes for heavy vehicles, then that is a good news for the business. So it's not necessary that everything will impact the business in a negative way. It can also be positive for the business. So this is an opportunity for the business here. You can see road blockades. So road blockades will be a negative situation for business again, especially it happens due to strikes. So the strikes are happening in a country because of political reasons. Will that be impacting the transportation? Yes, transportation will be the first thing which they plan to impact directly, so that the government hear what they say. That's why road blockades, especially in cases of strikes, impact the transportation industry at large. So these are just the political factors. Now let's talk about economic factors. So it depends on the state of economy, what interest rate they are charging, what is the inflation rate, what is the phase in which the economy is running. Is it inflation or it is deflation, recession? What is the scenario? So in case of like recession, what happened in case of recent pandemic? Transportation was impacted, yes. Fuel prices. So prices of anything is an economic criteria. It is a thing which we study in economics. So it is covered under economic environment. Fuel prices, which is a major portion of cost for a haulage firm. If fuel prices are increasing, this will impact significantly the profits of a haulage firm. Most haulers borrow to purchase trucks. Yes, so interest rates. So usually what happens if you are running a haulage firm, a transportation firm, you will need trucks. Those big trucks are actually very, very costly. So what you do is you take those on hire or installment. You purchase it on hire, which is known as hire purchase. Hire purchase is a system where you make payments in installments. It is similar to installment system. So most of the trucks are purchased on hire purchase system, because you do not have to invest a huge amount of money now. You can pay it in installments and you can enjoy the truck. The ownership will be transferred to you later on, but from accounting point of view and from business point of view, you are the owner of the truck, even when you have not paid the entire cost of the truck. So interest rates, if the interest rates are higher, then installments will be heavy, and it will again impact the cost of doing business. So political, economic, then social factors. Let's talk about social factors. How many people are out there on the street with cars or their vehicles? So the predicted number of cars and usage will affect the likelihood of traffic. And you know what traffic will be blamed upon? The heavy vehicles again. So it is another factor. Public concerns over the safety, like in case the road is passing nearby a school where children's play, or a children's playground, then that means heavy vehicles might not be allowed there, or there can be speed limits there, right? So all these things will impact the timing in which goods are delivered, again impacting the business of haulers, right? Technological factors are also there. So for example, government has reduced the route by making a hanging bridge, or like a suspension bridge or something. Then that is a technological factor. Technological developments can help the business to bloom. Also, we have like anti-theft devices. Trucks are of very high value. They are susceptible to theft. So if there is anti-theft system in place, then that can save a lot of money. We also use GPS for positioning the trucks or for finding the way. We also use direction systems. So tracking systems can be there, like telematics are there. What is a telematic? Telematic is a device which is fitted to a truck, which gives the location of the truck to the head office, which tells the data about distance covered, which gives the data of hours driven, which gives the data of speed limits crossed or speed, average speed or things like that. So this kind of data will help the business better control the trucks from the head office, right? So those tracking systems like telematics are in place. So again, technology is helping. You can plan your routes. If you see on Google Maps, you find that, okay, a person is going from this place to this place, or I want to go to this place, then this is the best route, and these are all the possible routes. So it is only because of technology that we have access to different routes, and we are able to judge which route is the fastest, or which route is the straight one, or which route has least elevation, which route will get the least number of traffic lights, which route is free of jam, and things like that. Development in tire technology, like for in areas where it snows, it is very important that the tires are of good grip. So tire technology can help in ensuring that the vehicle damage is minimal, accidents are minimal. All these factors are impacting the business of a hauler, right? Similarly, competitive environment, PESTLE, it is not covered under PESTLE, but still it is a factor of environment, external environment, which impacts you. So competitive rivalry among other haulers, how do they perform? Like they treat each other as competitors, or they treat each other as a community? It will depend. And accordingly, it will impact the business also. Threat from substitutes, like they can be threat not directly from the direct competitors, other haulers. They can be threat from other means of transportation also, like airways, railways. So if haulage is by rail, it's faster, it's cheaper as well. So that there's a competition which the haulers can face. Threat of new firms entering the market. There can always be new entrants to the market. Those people who were associated with us, now they think that they can start a business of haulage. They can also enter into the business, and that way they will chop some of the business from us. So that's again a threat. So all these factors of external environment, whether political or economic or social or anything else, these pose threats or these pose opportunities for the business. Okay, so threats and opportunities are actually coming from all these external environmental components. Okay, so there will be a SWOT analysis which we'll study later on, but that SWOT analysis is something which requires external factors. S and W means strength and weakness, which is coming from internal environment, and OT is opportunities and threat, which is coming from external environment. Just trying to create a link between this and the other chapters. So this is how we can do pest analysis for any kind of firm, in any kind of industry. And this is very important while doing business, because it helps you devise plans, it helps you take the right decisions, it helps you make the right strategies. Okay. Now let's talk about political systems and government policy. This is something for which we have to study this chapter. So abhi tak to we just took an introduction of how the external environmental factors impact the business. but this chapter is all about political and legal factors. तो हम लोग अभी इसमें जो भी पढ़ने वाले हैं, that is related to government and its policy. So political systems and government policy. First, you will have to understand that कि business किस तरह से government के ऊपर depend करता है या government किस तरह से function करती है. So let's talk about any country. Let's talk about India, our nation. India के अंदर there is government and there is parliament. क्या दोनों एक ही बॉडी हैं या दोनों अलग अलग हैं? बोथ आर डिफरेंट एक्चुअली. पार्लियामेंट होती है जो बनाती है लॉ. गवर्नमेंट होती है जो उन लॉज को एग्जीक्यूट करती है. पार्लियामेंट कुछ पावर्स देती है गवर्नमेंट को. उस पावर के हिसाब से पावर्स को बोलते हैं डेलीगेटेड लेजिस्लेशन. वो डेलीगेटेड लेजिस्लेशन के हिसाब से गवर्नमेंट खुद से भी कुछ लॉ तो नहीं बना सकती, लेकिन पॉलिसीज बना सकती है. गवर्नमेंट बना सकती है पॉलिसीज. इस सिस्टम में एक सिस्टम और आ गया, दैट इज जुडिशरी. जुडिशरी इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ लॉ. प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ लॉ कैसे? देखिए क्या है, लॉ मेकर ने लॉ बना दिया, बड़े अच्छे इंटेंशन से लॉ बना था, but it is not necessary that the law will be interpreted in the same sense in which it was made. So there can be people who are misinterpreting the law, and for that, for the protection of that, there is judiciary always in place. So judiciary क्या करती है? It does nothing more than interpretation of law. It unfolds the law, it unfolds the real meaning of law and protects the law. भले ही गवर्नमेंट कभी लॉ फॉलो नहीं कर रही है, तो भी जुडिशरी कम्स इन प्लेस एंड जुडिशरी आस्क्स द गवर्नमेंट टू गिव क्लैरिफिकेशंस और टेल्स द गवर्नमेंट टू मेक एक्चुअल लॉ इन द पार्लियामेंट एंड देन गो अबाउट थिंग्स. सो इस तरह से पूरा सिस्टम चल रहा होता है किसी गवर्नमेंट का, किसी भी नेशन का. सो आप ऐसे मत सोचिए कि गवर्नमेंट इज द वन हु मेक्स द लॉज, हु डज व्हाटएवर द गवर्नमेंट वांट्स. नो, दिस इज नॉट पॉसिबल. The constitution of any country is the foremost body of law, and that constitution gives the parliament to make to the powers to make any law. Again, depending on what kind of law it is, different kinds of parliaments can be there in the country. Like for India, in India we have a federal system of government, a dual system of government, sorry, where we have the central government also and the state governments also. Some powers are vested with the state government, so central government cannot interfere. Some powers are vested with the central government. State governments cannot interfere there. In this way, I'm just talking about general, about other countries also. So some countries might have a unitary system of government where there is only a central government. Some countries have a dual layer of authority, like India has, where we have dual system, where there's a central government and for different states and provinces there are state governments. Depending on what bodies are involved, we can categorize these authorities as regional government, national and supranational. So from Indian point of view, if I talk about government of Maharashtra, government of Kerala, government of Rajasthan, government of Gujarat, these are regional governments. Also, there can be a more smaller classification of local governments also. So there can be local governments also. Means, for example, the people who are elected in your municipality or district council, those are forming part of local government. So local and regional can be grouped together. Regional government sets law only for its own particular region. Similar laws may or may not exist in other regions of the same country. Okay, so there are so many subjects which are covered by the regional government. In India, we follow the system of lists. In the 7th schedule of Constitution, we have 3 lists. List 1 incorporates all those items on which the central government will make laws. List 2 incorporates all those items on which state government will make laws, and list 3 is concurrent list on which both center and state governments have power to make laws. Like for example, education, for example, public safety. So both central government and state governments can make laws, form policies, and control in those areas which are in list number 3. Why am I explaining you all this? I'm explaining you all this so that you understand how the government of a country works. So not like just India, every country works in the similar fashion, where they have a constitution, where they have a parliament where they make laws, where they have a government who executes the laws made by parliament, where they have a judiciary system which protects the laws made by parliament. Okay, so a political system is a set of institutions, political organization, and interest groups. Interest groups such as lobby groups, जिनको अपन इंडिया में गठबंधन टाइप बोलते हैं, and the relationship between them. So we are not just talking about political parties. When we are talking about political system, we are talking about institutions also. We are talking about election commission also. We are talking about political organizations like parties also, and interest groups also, जैसे parties कभी-कभी collaborate कर जाते हैं. And we are studying about the relationship among them, relationship between them, and rules and norms that govern their functions. जैसे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है या इलेक्शन लॉ है, ये वो रूल्स या लॉज हैं जिसके हिसाब से हमारा पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम ऑपरेट करेगा. सो पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम डज नॉट ऑपरेट इन chaos, इट ऑपरेट्स ऑन अ सेट ऑफ रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस एंड नॉर्म्स, एंड वो रूल्स या रेगुलेशन या नॉर्म्स एक्सीड करते हैं तो there are repercussions also on political parties also. Okay, so depending on this, I have told you that the governments or the political systems can be of 3 levels. One was regional. You have understood this. This can be of your state or it can be of your city as well. City council is an example. National government is also there, or national level political system is also in place. It is, for a nation, it is the highest authority. So it is higher level legal authority than the regional government, obviously. It sets laws for all the regions and citizens of the country. So whatever laws are made at national level are to be followed by every region of the country. And beyond that, beyond the nation, there are some powerful bodies also which make laws globally. These are known as supranational government, not necessarily for all the governments, but for majority of the countries. So it comprises of a number of member nations, like we have UNO, United Nations Organization. That's a very good example. Or we have WTO, World Trade Organization. These are very powerful bodies which dictate their laws and which compel the other countries to abide by those laws. So they have a number of member nations, and governing board is also there. Governing board comprises of representatives from each member nation. Yes, like the United Nations have representatives from all the countries. So there are 3 levels of political systems: global, national, and local. Global will have World Trade Organization. European Union is also there in Europe. It is very important body. European Union is like a cluster of small countries in Europe. Almost all the countries are there except for a few. UK is now exiting from European Union, which is known as Brexit. So Brexit is not a one-day process. If you are part of a union, it will not take you one day to decide and leave. It will take you years to leave that organization. That is happening with the UN. So whenever anybody says that, England, UK is not part of European Union, then we can say that they are a part right now. They are trying to exit, and the exit formalities are in place. But until then, UK is a part of European Union. So for UK, European Union becomes the global political system. If you are a company which is operating in UK, Will you be impacted by the global political system? Yes, you will be. Will you be impacted by WTO, European Union? Yes, you will be. That means these are part of your external environment, which are outside your nation, but still has impact on you. There can be national level political systems as well, which means your government and your national level parliament. There can be local level governments and local parliaments as well, like councils, which we call. These are the source of political system, which can impact you. Now let's talk about the legal authority. Sources of legal authority. I've told you that political system and legal system are basically different. So legal system will include the parliament and the judiciary, which is actually protecting the parliaments. So supranational level means at the global level, we have United Nations, International Court of Justice, ICJ, European Parliament is there, which is for whole of European Union. European courts are there. At national level, we all have the parliament. All the nations have parliaments. There are senior courts, usually known as Supreme Courts, like Supreme Court in UK and USA and India also have the highest court as Supreme Court. That is the apex court, which is operating at the national level. So you can say that ICJ, in Indian context, you can say that ICJ is supranational, then Supreme Court is national, then your high courts at your respective states are part of your regional courts. Also, you have your district courts, which will also fall under regional. So, regional and federal governments, local councils. So, you have regional government like the state government, and state government have your state parliament also in different states, in different countries. Yes. Depending on what structure you have of government, there will be a state government and there cannot be a state government. Yes, for small countries, usually they do not have state governments. And local councils also will be there. These are generally at the city or town level. So this is how a political and legal system looks like. This is basically the hierarchy of political and legal systems. Moving forward, now how can the government affect an organization? See, it depends on government policies. As I told you, Parliament makes the law, but not every time Parliament can decide on to every small thing. So what Parliament does is it gives power to the government. It is known as delegated legislation. So Parliament gives power to the government to execute the law, right? So government can have different policies depending on the different laws formed by the Parliament. Government's policies will impact the business for sure. So there are a few illustrations here. I will not read everything. It is for you to read. This is your assignment. Illustration number 2 is political systems and government policy. For example, government policy about housing. If government is promoting housing and government is promoting affordable housing for all, then there will be interest rate cuts, which will again boost up the demand for housing. From a business point of view, if you are in construction or real estate business, it will be a good sign, right? So new housing developments can give opportunities to house building firms and will create new communities that will demand shops, leisure facilities. So not just housing. If you are housing a community or a colony, then that means in that colony, you will need other places where people will go to meet their needs and demands, like shops, like leisure facilities, like parks and all. So you'll have demand for that as well, giving opportunities to firm in these industries as well. So government's point of view, or I should say policy relating to housing will impact directly the businesses related. Government policy relating to crime will impact security businesses, right? Like CCTV. If you're a provider of CCTV, government's policy will have a large impact. or the crime situation will also have impact. Sometimes unfortunate situation can give boom to the business as well, like what happened in case of healthcare. So this pandemic, which is an unfortunate situation, gave a big push to the healthcare industry everywhere. All those involved or indulged in healthcare industry, they got very good returns. So healthcare policy has obvious implications for drugs. Drugs means I'm talking about medicine here, and equipment manufacturers also, and private hospitals. Like for example, critical support equipment manufacturers. Critical support equipments are like respiratory systems and ventilators, things like that. Those kind of equipment manufacturers got a very big push because of this pandemic. So as I said, government's policy or the situations might also impact the industry or the firm, individual firms also. So please make a reading of this. There are different kinds of areas in which different government policies could be pursued, and depending on that, businesses will be impacted. Like there's one more, foreign policy. So government's foreign policy will impact businesses to a very great extent. Government foreign policy, if it is of protectionism, which is known as inward looking strategy. Inward looking strategy means where the government is trying to protect the domestic industry, where the government is not focusing on conquering the rest of the world or the international market, where the government is actually protecting the domestic market from international firms. That kind of policy is protectionism. So that will impact your business, yes. If protectionism is followed, then there will be no foreign entrants. There will be less competition from foreign firms. That can be good for your business, but not in long run, because you will not face competition. There will be no flow of technology into the country, and definitely it will hamper the kind of goods we are offering. Obviously, protectionism works both ways. If you're not allowing others to come to your country or market, others will not allow you to come to their market. So exports will reduce. It depends on what kind of policy or outlook government is actually taking. So example will be new economic policy, which came in 1991. Prior to that, India was a protectionism kind of state. It was following protectionism. It was protecting the domestic industry from international competition. But after the new economic policy of 1991, India took a U-turn. This kind of amendments or changes are popularly known as LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. These are the policies which are followed after 1991, and accordingly, imports and exports have increased a lot. Economy has opened a lot. Technology has flown in, and Indian firms have gone to the global market. So such kind of strategies or such kind of policies of government impacts businesses up to a large extent. The other way that government can affect organization is by direct legislation. So now let's talk about legislations which impact the business. Legislations impacting the business can be categorized as specific and general. See, this is my categorization. It is not there in the book. Specific legislation means which are specific to an industry. Example will be food related regulations. In India, there's a body FSSAI, right? So FSSAI ensures that the food which is being traded in the market is not bad for the health. They try to ensure that food safety measures are in place. So all those food related regulations will be specific legislation. But also there can be like general legislations like employee protection. There can be legislations of data protection. Legislation can be in place for fair competition. These are general in nature. For consumer protection, so these kinds of legislations are general. General means applicable on all kinds of firms, all kinds of businesses, applicable on all businesses. So specific legislations will not study here. Later on, maybe when you are dealing with your clients, you need to go through the specific legislation yourself. But when it comes to general legislation, we need to have a good understanding of how the employees are protected and how the data protection legislations are in place. So this is another classification here. Laws affecting a business. These are general laws actually. So employee protection, data protection, health and safety, and consumer protection. These are 4 areas in which we will study here. Employee protection, as the name suggests, will cover the laws relating to protection of employees. Data protection will cover the laws relating to data of the consumer, especially. Health and safety measures will be taken for the workers, also the clients, if they are in the premises of the business. Consumer protection will be for all kinds of consumers, their health, also if they are involved in any fraud or anything, there are laws in place which will prosecute the business involved in fraud. So there are laws in place so that the business can be done in a fair and just manner, and every stakeholder is benefited, right? So business does not mean stealing from someone. It means giving something of value and taking back what belongs to you, or I should say what is your contribution in that value addition. Okay, this is how a business should be looked upon. So there can be direct legislations which impact an organization because these are specific to an organization. Organization must comply with appropriate legislation. If they do not, then there can be fines, there can be closure of business, there can be bad publicity or loss of customers. Yes, all kinds of repercussions can be there. So there's a TYU. Let's solve this one. Consider the following statement. First, senior courts are a source of supranational authority. No. Senior courts means Supreme Court. So Supreme Court is a source of national authority, not supranational authority. This one is wrong. Second, legislation and policy can both be used by government to affect organizations. Yes, legislations can be made. Also, policies can be made in case of delegated legislation by the government. So this one is right. Which of these statements is correct? So I would say only second one is correct. B should be the answer. This is how you have to judge the right statements and accordingly give answers in such kind of questions. Let's talk about the first thing, that is employee protection. So we'll talk in general what kind of laws are in place in almost all the countries which promote business, which provide a safe environment for businesses to flourish. So within many countries, the national governments have passed legislations which protect employees from unfair treatment by the employers. So what we need to deal here is unfair treatment. Unfair treatment of whom? Of employees. So you need to understand that employees are naturally in a disadvantageous position because they're actually deriving their income from their employer. So they sometimes face a situation where, because of personal reasons or personal rivalry, the employer kicks them out of the employment, and they are without any employment later on. So to protect such practices, or there can be like some discrimination. A person was eligible for employment, but was different in color than the employer. So employer discriminated according to uh, maybe race, maybe sex, maybe caste, maybe creed, maybe any other thing, language, skin color, anything. So there are many differences among human beings, and those can give rise to discrimination in the employment space as well. So for protection of employees against all those unfair practices, there are laws in place. This type of legislation is often designed specifically to cover termination of the employment of a worker. So specifically, the worst penalty which an employee can face is termination of the job, right? So there are certain terms which we'll study. So there's one term which is retirement. Retirement is also end of job, but this happens when a person retires from the job, means stops doing the job. Maybe they are quitting, or they have achieved uh, such an age where they do not uh, want to work, or legally are not allowed to work. That is retirement. Retirement can be due to age. It can be because of other reasons also. It can be voluntary also. So it can be forced and voluntary. The trend in recent years has moved towards voluntary retirement, means people they voluntarily retire before they come of age, with employers seeking to hire younger employees. So what actually the employers do is, employers nowadays face a situation where they feel that their older workforce, their older workforce is quite, I would say, they are outdated in terms of technology. The employers sometimes feel that. But when they talk about younger workforce, they see an opportunity that these will be well versed with technology. These will be cheaper as well because they are just starting their career. In case of older workforce, they are expensive because they are working for so long. Also, when an older work employee resigns, or I would say retires, there's a big void which is created, and employees do not want that void to be created very soon. So what they can do is they can involve younger workforce in place of older workforce, and that can be mutually agreed as well. So they can offer the older employees or the older workforce VRS, voluntary retirement schemes. In that voluntary retirement scheme, any worker can opt for the scheme if they have completed a stipulated number of years, and after that, they can retire from the business. Obviously, there's some compensation there. So compensation is provided to the employees who are taking VRS. Of course, this has mean that they have to provide employees adequate compensation. So retirement can be voluntary, can be forced also sometimes, can be because of age also. If it is because of age, it is known as superannuation. It is called superannuation. Pardon me for my handwriting. You can also note all these things in your study material. Employees can resign also. So simple resignation means the employee do not want to continue. But resignation is a hard decision to make. For the organization, it is a loss. It can be a potential loss of good talent. For the employee, it is obviously a loss of job and source of income. So there can be resignations which are induced by something else happening at the workplace. the employer should be very vigilant while accepting resignations. Resignations should be dealt with care as people resign for a variety of reasons. These reasons can include any kind of harassment at the workplace or any kind of discrimination which you as the owner do not want but other people are doing in your organization. So you should handle resignations with care. In cases the organization should provide the in any case, the organization should provide the employees with opportunities to voice their concerns. It is known as opportunity of being heard. It should be there always. It is one of the principles of natural justice. So always the person who is resigning should be given an opportunity to speak up their mind, to process their concerns to the management. This can be ensured by conducting exit interviews. So exit interviews are there in place. So this paragraph is actually not in our study material. This I have added from somewhere else, but I thought it is necessary for you to understand this as well. So we have discussed two ways of ending employment. If you want to end your employment or any way the employment is ending, then there can be retirement, there can be resignation. These two we have understood. What else can be there? There can be a third term known as dismissal. Dismissal actually can be termed as termination also, where the employment is being ended from the employer's side generally. Dismissal also includes one more type of one more way of ending the employment, that is redundancy, but that will be discussed later and differently, not a part of dismissal. So let's talk about dismissal. Dismissal of an employee, including circumstances where contract term has ended without removal of employee, is dismissed due to breach of contract terms, should be dealt with care. Overall, dismissal should also be dealt with care. What is discussed in this line is known as constructive dismissal. What is a constructive dismissal? Constructive dismissal is encouraging an employee to resign by breaching the terms of contract. So, if I agree to pay you £10,000 a month or maybe a year, as the case may be, and then I deny after 1 month that I won't pay you that much, then I'm actually breaching the terms of contract. Breaching means breaking the terms of contract. A contract is a legally enforceable agreement. So if you breach the terms of contract, terms of employment contract, the employee may not be ready to work on the new terms which you have set, and that's why the employees may resign. That is actually not resignation, that is constructive dismissal. Okay, I hope you are getting this one. In any case, there should be a statutory period of notice which should be in place. So even if employees dismissing you, the employer is dismissing you as an employee, then the employer should provide you a notice period. It is generally stated in the contract of employment. So whenever you start your employment with any firm or any organization, you sign a contract of employment, and in that contract of employment, there are terms like what are the working hours, what will be the working locations, working conditions, how you will take the leaves, how you will exit the firm. So all those things are generally there in place. And there is also a notice period there, that when the firm will require you to leave, firm will give you 1 month's notice or 2 months notice or whatever the case may be. Similarly, you'll also have a notice period while leaving. Longer periods may be written into the contract at the employer's discretion and by agreement. So longer the period, the exit becomes easier for the organization. So for example, if the organization states that you'll have a exit period of 3 months, then that simply means that you will have to provide a advance notice of 3 months before you leave. So the firm will get 3 months to adjust accordingly and to replace you with someone else, right? Either party may waive their right to notice or accept payments in lieu of notice. So this is also a term which is used. Payment in lieu of notice, what is that? If the employer said that you will be given 3 months notice and the same you have to give, and now the employer is saying that, okay, you should now leave the job, then they may opt to give you 3 months pay instead of 3 months notice. Means, for example, if your employer say that at the end of September, they are saying you leave immediately. And you're saying that you have to give me 3 months as per the terms of contract. Employer may offer you 3 months advance pay and tell you to leave immediately. So it can be the case. This is something which I'm talking about from the actuals which are happening in the industry. Whenever anybody wants to leave early, they pay you. So it can be both ways. Like from the employee's point of view also, if you as an employer are leaving without giving a notice period, then you can surrender 1 month's salary, 2 months salary, 3 months salary, whatever your notice period is, and leave the firm, right? So one kind of dismissal is constructive dismissal, where you are encouraged to leave the job because your terms of contract are not fulfilled. Let's study it from the study material as well. Sometimes employees may resign because their employer has breached the term of their contract of employment. This is known as constructive dismissal, right? So in a way, you are encouraged to end your employment. Examples of constructive dismissal include employees resigning due to reducing their wages without agreement. Like when it was agreed, when you started your employment, the wages were something else. Now the wages are reduced. This has happened a lot in times of pandemic. So that can be a cause of constructive dismissal. Means you resigning, you as an employee resigning yourself, but you are coerced by the situations. Or it can also include a reason such as allowing them to be bullied or harassed in the workplace. So if your employer is not paying attention to harassment, which is being taken place against you, then that can also motivate you to leave the organization. That will also be covered in constructive dismissal. So you have to understand this thing, that questions can be asked where case is given to you, where they are indicating any kind of bullying or harassment or a reduction in wages, and then the employee is taking the decision to leave by themselves. But you have to understand that that situation is constructive dismissal. 4 options will be given to you. You have to take the option of constructive dismissal. All right. So there's one more statement under the Employment Rights Act in UK. This is a law which protects employees. To be fair, an employer must have been dismissed for one of the following reasons. So what we are talking about here is fair dismissal. Fair dismissal is allowed and it is legal also. So if you as an employer is indulging in fair dismissal of any of your employees, the employees cannot sue you back. In all other cases, means I'm referring to unfair dismissal. In case of unfair dismissal, employees can get back to you with a suit, with a lawsuit, and you can be penalized also. So they lacked the capability or qualification for the job, then the employee can be fairly dismissed. they were guilty of misconduct. There's some misconduct which was undertaken by the employee, then also you can remove that employee, and that will be fair dismissal. Like, for example, they were involved in theft or dishonesty or burglary or moral turpitude, things like that. They were aggressive at workplace, they were showing anger, all those things which you as an employer had included in the examples of misconduct while drafting the contract of employment. All those things will be the ground for rightful and fair dismissal. Also, sometimes the job can be redundant. So how it can be, like, for example, you had branches in 5 cities. Your business had branches in 5 cities, and one branch you are shutting down because of low business or no business or losses. So all the staff which is there in that 5th branch can be dismissed due to redundancy. Redundancy means the job is no more required, the position is no more required, or the organization is shrinking on to the number of employees, right? They were dismissed for legal reasons also. There can be legal reasons, like in the terms of employment, it was stated that you should not involve yourself in employment somewhere else, or you should not be involved in some criminal activity or drug abuse. And later on, it was found that the employee was involved in drug abuse or criminal charges are there against the employee. Then that dismissal is for legal reasons, right? So if these 4 reasons are the reasons for dismissal, then that kind of dismissal is fair dismissal. You should read and understand and learn these. First, the employee is not qualified enough or capable enough. That's why the employee is dismissed. Second, the employee is guilty of misconduct. The employee has done something which he was told not to do. Third, job was redundant. The job is no more required. Job is no more in place. And fourth, dismissal for legal reasons. Legally, you are not allowed to get employed. So as per Employment Rights Act in UK, these are the grounds for fair dismissal. Any other dismissal is not fair dismissal. If an organization is unable to prove that dismissal was fair, they may be accused of unfair dismissal. And believe me, students, unfair dismissal can result in a lot of monetary penalty against the organization. There are so many cases where the employees have filed cases worth millions against their employers, and they have won also, right? Unfair dismissal occurs when an employee has been dismissed for an unfair reason. In the UK, unfair reason can be pregnancy. Like if an employee is pregnant, then you should, from legal point of view, you should give the employee maternity leave. Also, you cannot terminate that employee legally from employment. In some countries, there's paternal leave also. Paternal leave means if these are provided to a father, and since males do not require leaves on a childbirth, still they may require some family time with the child. So any paternal leaves will not result in someone being terminated. So if somebody is taking leaves just to be with family, in case of a childbirth, then such kind of paternal leave cannot be a reason for dismissal. Or if it is a reason, then it will be an unfair dismissal. Sometimes the employees join any trade unions, labor unions. You can't say that since the employee is joining a labor union which works against the business, then you can't be a part of our employment. So anyone who is joining a trade union cannot be dismissed on fair grounds. Also, there can be discrimination. So if the discrimination is the ground for dismissal, then that kind of dismissal is unfair dismissal, and believe me, there are a lot of penalties on this. So Discrimination can be on any ground. It can be religion, ethnicity, gender, sexuality. It can be based on anything. And if these are the reasons for someone to be dismissed, then such dismissal is unfair dismissal. It should not be there. As a society, as a government, nation do not promote this, and that's why there can be court cases, there can be suits against the organization involving in unfair dismissal. Also, there's a third term known as wrongful dismissal. So we'll get back to what we have studied. We were studying dismissals, and that dismissal we have studied constructive dismissal, I've told you. Fair dismissal, I have told you. Anything which is not fair is unfair also. And there's another category which is known as wrongful dismissal. So wrongful dismissal just means that the dismissal ground is correct, but the terms of dismissal are not followed. Like you were told that whenever the organization will dismiss you in case, then you'll be given 1 month's notice. And now you're not given 1 month's notice. That is wrongful dismissal. Because the ground of dismissal is correct. They are dismissing you because of the correct reasons, but the conditions of dismissal or the contract are not fulfilled. Right? So let's study about this. If an organization is unable to, sorry, not this, yeah, this one. Note that unfair dismissal is not the same as wrongful dismissal. Wrongful dismissal can also be in case of a fair dismissal. The wrongful dismissal occurs when an employer breaks the terms of employee's contract during the dismissal. So during the dismissal, if the contract is not followed, then that will be the case of wrongful dismissal. For instance, by not giving the proper notice period for dismissal. Okay, so it can be a bit confusing, but if you try to study it with examples, then it will be very clear to you. Constructive dismissal means, I'll repeat myself for all kinds of dismissal, please pay attention. Constructive dismissal means dismissal where you are resigning, the employee is resigning because of breach of contract. Breach of contract or any other terms of contract. Fair dismissal is on any of the four grounds. Any of the four grounds like involving misconduct or due to incapability or not because of the reasons of qualification, like the qualification is not sufficient or the job has become redundant or because of legal restrictions or legal reasons. All those are reasons for fair dismissal, means four reasons. Dismissal which is not fair is unfair. So broadly, there are only two categories, fair and unfair. Right? Constructive dismissal and wrongful dismissal can fall both under fair and unfair also, depending on the situation. Wrongful dismissal is something which is not necessarily of unfair dismissal, which can be a fair dismissal, but at the time of dismissal, the terms which were applicable during the term of dismissal are not properly followed by the employer. That will be wrongful dismissal. Okay. It is important that the organization follows its internal disciplinary policies in the run-up for any dismissal. There should be proper step-by-step policy that this is to be done and that this is to be done, and all the assets should be taken back, and all the NOCs, no objection certificates, should be taken from all the places where the person has worked. Clients should be informed if the employee was a client-facing employee. All those processes should be followed. Internal processes should be followed. Failure to do so can lead to expensive and time-consuming legal action. Okay, so if the dismissal is not proper, there can be legal actions, and the legal actions are way much costly as compared to what you are paying the employee, right? The last kind of the last way to end an employment is redundancy. Again, this is also a kind of dismissal, but we'll categorize it differently. So ending the employment could be done through retirement, through resignation, through dismissal, and the last thing is redundancy. You can see that redundancy is one of the ground of fair dismissal. Job was redundant, but it is discussed separately because it is a topic worth paying attention to. What is redundancy? Redundancy is a form of dismissal. Definitely it is a dismissal, which occurs when an employer needs to reduce the size of its workforce, where the workforce is in excess of what is needed, or where you are shutting down some of the business units or branches. Then also you do not need the excess workforce, and you try to cut down the excess workforce. It is a legal form of dismissal. It is fair dismissal. Legislation in this area gives several typical rights to the employees, but those employees who are facing redundancy have certain rights. Okay, so redundancy should not be an excuse for discrimination. Okay, what are the rights of those who are being laid off because of redundancy? Are a right to consultation, like they can consult their employer and ask them why they are being laid off, and provide them options like, okay, if you want me to work in this department, I can. You're hiring for this department, maybe you can give me a chance. So this consultation is a right which is with the person who is being laid off because of redundancy. Next, a right to a fair notice period. Even if the workforce is redundant, you can't lay off anyone immediately with immediate effect. What you need to do is you need to respect the terms of contract, and if the terms of contract include any notice period, then the employee should be given a fair notice period. Next is right to redundancy pay. There should be redundancy pay also. So it does not mean that if a person is redundant, from the day the person becomes redundant, the employer need not pay anything. Employer needs to pay everything which belongs to the employee, which the employee should ideally get, even if it is during the notice period also. Everything should be paid plus an additional pay. So overall, this payment is known as redundancy pay. It depends on what kind of country you are in and what legislations are there to protect you from redundancy unemployment. So obviously, the redundant employee who's leaving the organization will get some payment to compensate for the job loss. Next is a right for redundancy selection to be carried out fairly. So you as a person who is redundant will have the right to compete among those who are actually staying back. For example, there are 100 employees. The ground for reduction of this 100 employees to 60 employees means 40 are being removed. You should have a say, or you should have a fair trial to stay in these 60 employees. If you are efficient, if you are good enough, then you should not be a part of those 40 who are leaving, right? So the selection should be on some justified basis. 50 employees who are actually laid off, these 40 employees who are laid off should be those who are fairly chosen. It should not be because of some discrimination or some other ground or some personal ground. All right. So the redundancy selection should be fair overall. Again, if there's a failure from the employer's point of view in any of these, then there can be legal repercussions and claims. So in a way, the laws for protection of employees is very, very strict and can lead to legal repercussions for the business. So the business should be very fair with regard to treatment of employees. almost all the countries, most of the countries, I would say, especially those who support and respect businesses, will have very good employer protection laws in place. I have an assignment for you, which is based on illustration number 1. So we did a pest analysis for Howledge firm. Now you need to do pest analysis for, let's say, a restaurant. This is an assignment that you need to do pest analysis the same way it is done here for a restaurant. This is your assignment.